Prickly Pear Land Trust, we run one of the local land trusts in the state. There are about 5 of us. We operate in a 4-county region, and we're kind of in west central Montana. One of the things we're most known for is the 75 miles of single-track trail that we manage and maintain in Helena's South Hills Trail System. We also have a pretty major private land conservation program where we work with primarily with ranchers to protect wildlife habitat and open space on working farms and ranches through the use of conservation easements. And then our third program is community conservation. And today I'll focus mostly on that aspect of what Prickly Pear Land Trust does. So community conservation is a term that has been fairly new in the conservation community, but is one that if you're a good conservation organization, you've been doing community conservation for a long time. And it is defined as when an organization like Prickly Pear acquires, usually it's through an acquisition, acquires a property, and in that acquisition or in that project, there are a diverse number of community stakeholders and user groups who will, at the end of the project, have benefited from it in a multitude of different ways. About a year ago, Prickly Pear Land Trust had a really great project come forward, and we weren't really sure what it was going to end up being, but what ended up happening is that we kind of just let it organically develop, and we got to know our neighbors. We acquired 205 acres in between Fort Harrison out there on the west side of town and the Archie Bray Center that you just heard about, and then our other neighbor is Spring Meadow Resources, who services folks with developmental disabilities. The property runs also along 10 Mile Creek. When Prickly Pear first acquired that property, we weren't really exactly sure what we were going to end up with, and actually we're still not completely sure. But we've come quite a way in our thinking, and it's been through the communication that we've had with mostly our neighbors out there, but with other stakeholders in the community, with a really diverse set of interests and backgrounds and needs. So the Land Trust Alliance is the national association of groups like Prickly Pear Land Trust, and they've identified this project that we are calling Peaks to Creeks. They've identified it as one of the best examples of community conservation in the nation, right here in Helena, Montana. It is because of the diversity in the user groups and the diverse benefits that that project will bring. So close your eyes for a minute and imagine a retired military leader with PTSD who has been treated at the VA's hospital. That hospital is the only place where that veteran can receive intensive treatment here in the state of Montana. We have the second highest rate of veteran PTSD in the entire US. And just across the street now, that veteran can access the open space in the outdoors, but also the solitude of the creek of 10 Mile Creek. The doctors at the VA are now saying that having access to the outdoors is one of the key factors in a veteran's ultimate success rate in dealing with something like PTSD. The same thing applies for some of the other ailments that face vets. So there's one person, and then standing next to that veteran is a new recruit soldier who's training to be deployed for the first time, and she gets to do her PT exercises now right across William Street in the big open field there next to the Archie Bray and 10 Mile Creek to run her 2-mile loop that she does every day. Standing next to her is a ceramic artist from the Archie Bray who might use that space as inspiration for the art that he or she does. And standing next to the ceramic artist is a single mom with 2 kids who likes to go to Spring Meadow Lake State Park, say. And she goes there because it's a great place where she can push the stroller on the flatter trails. It's also a state park, so the admission is free and it's close to her house. Now imagine standing next to that person is an individual with developmental disabilities who lives at Spring Meadow Resources, which is the facility right next to Montana Wild and George's Distributing. That is the place where a lot of the folks who work at Helena Industries live. And then standing next to that person is a conservationist like myself, who's excited about that acquisition because it will give the community the opportunity to have an education and access to 10 Mile Creek, but also additional open space. And once we're completed with some of the trail work out there, a bridge over 10 Mile and some new trails that connect to the VA. That picture of those people standing next to one another, that is exactly what community conservation means. It means that when an organization achieves a conservation objective, that's really great, but it means a lot more for the community if there are diverse interests standing next to one another who also see other benefits, and that project also brings other benefits to the community. Those projects strengthen communities in ways that are so much beyond what we would achieve if we were just singularly focused on our own needs or our own interests. There are a lot of great examples of this throughout the state of Montana, but again, that one is unique, and it wasn't that we planned it because of those diverse interests that are located around that property. If I was looking for community conservation projects now, that would be a great place to go. But it just sort of happened to come together the way that it has. And that was about a year ago when we acquired that property. And since then, we've spent quite a bit of time with people like Steve at the Archie Bray and doctors from the VA trying to figure out how we can make it the most accessible and the best for whatever those other community interests and needs are. So that's one example of community conservation. I'm going to break for a second just to talk about why community conservation matters so much beyond just the obvious reasons of bringing a diverse amount of benefit to a community for the strengthening and the alliance building that does. For anything, really, for any industry or any, it doesn't really matter what you do, but for conservation, if we're going to be relevant on into the future, we need to look more like and address the needs of what the future is. And when I think about what it's going to take for my kids to stand up and make sure that they do their part to make sure that conservation and open space and things like trails are available on into the future, we have to be relevant. And in order for us to be relevant, we have to make sure that we are appealing to the things that are going to be important for future generations. In that project, one of the examples that really jumps out at me is having access to 10 Mile Creek. 10 Mile Creek is our community's water source, and that property will now provide the only access to it in the entire urban boundary. That's going to be a really, really important thing as we start to see more and more challenges to things like water quantity and quality on into the future. And it's, the basic benefits of just the conservation education opportunity are great and obvious, but those are the things that make community conservation for me when I think about conservation 3 or 4 generations from now. It'll mean a lot more to my daughter and to her kids if we're making sure that we're relevant and that we mean something to everybody. And, luckily in Montana, community and conservation kind of balance the things that most people here can relate to. Most people value their community. And that can be defined in a number of ways, obviously, but they value their community. They also value conservation, whether they call it conservation or not. They value the land and the water and the mountains and the trails and the things that improve our quality of life by living here. And so this topic is one that I am really getting more and more excited about and really appreciate the opportunity to be here today again and visiting with you all. So thank you so much.